about the reverb section. Now, my experience with Dreadbox has been that Dreadbox really likes to fashion an interesting effect and then put it in the context of a synthesizer to sort of not just be like, oh, here's your synthesizer. Oh, and it also has this effect. Dreadbox makes effects, especially, it seems, with the intent of this effect being part of this synthesizer's sound. And, of course, you know, maybe I'm being wistful, but I like the idea of Nyx being a deity having to do with night, and then the reverb. So there's just like this spreading sort of darkness. I don't know. I'm sorry. That was probably way too poetic for this whole deal. But we have this really important and central reverb functionality sitting right here, begging to be used. And I got to say, I'm not much of a reverb person. I really like, for example, on the Hypnosis, the spring reverb is really interesting in the way it affects the character of the sound. But in general, I don't use reverb at all. So it was really interesting when I first played the first Nyx, when I heard the reverb, I'm like, this is a reverb I would use. And certainly here, this is a reverb I would use. And when I was recording the theme to this, I had a really hard time not putting reverb on everything. And that's so unlike me. It's just the simple fact that this reverb is really a compelling reverb. Okay, so I've made this sound using the bandpass filter and some of the techniques we talked about. That just makes me so happy. I don't want my personal taste to creep in here, but I am really enjoying the timbre of this synthesizer. Okay, so this is the sound I'm going to use with the reverb. I'm going to jack it up because reverbs tend to diminish the volume a bit. Let's hear the mix with everything down. I'm just going to bring in the mix. See, I just love the way that this actually colors the sound. And of course, we can increase the size. Giving it the sound of a larger space within which this reverb is occurring. Also, the size is really fun because, like on a delay, if you mess with the size, you're going to get pitch effects. Of course, the real fun kicks in when we get into the feed back, marked feed. That feedback is not kidding. It will just go on forever. it's it just has such a nice character. Okay, so I could probably do that all day, and you probably want me to stop. But that is what the reverb sounds like. Now we have this stuff over here that says wave, rate, and level. And you're probably saying to yourself, what is that? Well, I can tell you that. Well, I mean, I can't tell you entirely. I don't entirely know. But what we're talking about here is a modulation that could be affecting the size, or it could actually be in some way shifting pitch. But what it ends up doing is it ends up bending the frequency of the sounds in the reverb in interesting ways, causing unique, weird chorusing excitement. So let's just I'm going to bring up the rate so it's more evident. And the wave, I'll explain the wave in a second, but let's just listen to it here. Okay, you can hear that it is causing these little jumps in pitch. This is the first time I've done it this way. I love that. That's hilarious. That's a great sound. That is probably not the typical desired application of this functionality, but it does give you a sense of what is happening with the sound. So if you then, what the wave does is the wave adds lag to that sort of sample and hold that's happening. So you get this variation in pitch. Now, if you bring the rate down, it will just add something interesting to the reverb. And if you bring it down to a more reasonable level, it won't sound like, whoa, that pitch is sliding all over the place. It just gives this sort of warbly warmth to the sound. Now, okay, so that setting's pretty weird. But I mean, that's a weird thing. That's the only thing that does that thing. You can certainly apply that to something. In fact, here's the other thing that's cool. Maybe you don't want any reverb at all, but you would like another modulation source. If you look over here in the patch panel, we have an output marked mod rev. That is the reverb modulation. So that sample and hold, that lagged sample and hold that you heard, you can direct anywhere, even if you're not using it while you're using the reverb, or even if you're not using the reverb at all, you can apply that to something. So let's... So it's not just an interesting character to add to your reverb, it's also another modulation source that you can use in addition to the LFO, these two modulation sources. So it's really beneficial in addition to that reverb having the beautiful sound that it has.